Very bad idea of nerfing Medicham. That's what we're gonna break down and have a look at. Those of you on my Discord or know me pretty well know that I am totally against the idea of nerfing Medicham, and I know the overwhelming majority of you out there are also on that side as well. And there's just a very small minority of people that have this idea that nerfing Medicham would be a good idea. That is awful. That is an awful idea. Medicham is a very good Pokemon. It is not broken and certainly not in need of a nerf. So we're going to go over why it feels like it may be in need of a nerf by this very small minority of people. So here's the deal. This stems mostly from Medicham not having enough viable answers in the meta, and the answers that are in the meta right now are neutralized by other Pokemon that Medicham is often paired with, most notably Lantern and Noctowl. So we're going to look at all of that, and I'm going to explain to you why Medicham is not broken. Very good. Not broken, though. And why nerfing Medicham would be a bad idea. So let's have a look first. Some people are, I think the overwhelming viewpoint is that we either nerf counter or nerf ice punch, which are both very bad ideas. Nerfing psychic is not a great idea either, and we'll look at why as well. So first, let's look at why nerfing ice punch and psychic are bad ideas. Let's have a look at that. All right, guys, we've got PV Poke here, and we're looking at all of the available ice charge moves in the game. If we look here, Ice Punch is the second worst ice charge move in the game, right behind Aurora Beam. If you look at Aurora Beam, the damage per energy is 1.33. That is awful. Ice Punch, not far behind at 1.37. It's a terrible move already. Nerfing that is just ridiculous because that would make the move unusable. We're going to nerf Ice Punch and make it completely unusable, like other charge moves in the game right now. It's on the cusp. I mean, it's usable now, but it's not a great move. So nerfing that is not the way. Nerfing Medicham as a whole is not the way. So can't nerf Ice Punch. That would make the move unusable. Let's have a look at Psychic here. And Psychic is very interesting. I don't think nerfing that is the way as well. Not to mention with Ice Punch, there are a lot of Pokemon that also rely on Ice Punch that you would be damaging and making them very much unpleasant to use. Most notably, Alolan Sandslash, which got a buff this season and has seen a lot of play, which is fantastic. Do we want to go back to the Dark Ages and nerf that thing? I don't think so. Not to mention the other Pokemon like Poliwrath, which recently got a Community Day and also heavily relies on Ice Punch. We can't do that. That's a terrible idea. Let's also look at Psychic here. So I'm going to type in Psychic. And look at this, guys. We've got 6 Psychic charge moves that are in the game right now. How many of these have broad distribution? Not very many. We've got Psycho Boost. That is virtually exclusive to Deoxys. We've got Psystrike, virtually exclusive to Mewtwo. And then we can look at Psychic Fangs, which is sort of a specialty type move. It has decent distribution, but not too many Pokemon are using it right now. Psybeam has decent distribution as well, but is an awful move and is in need of an update. That leaves us with, what do we have here? Future Sight. Let me just type it, type in the actual typing here. Okay, so we do have more than that, but so we've got Synchronoise as well. That's also exclusive to Glade and Gardevoir. We've got Miracoat. That's not viable. We've got Mist Ball and Luster Purge, also exclusive moves. I have no idea what Heart Stamp is. I've never seen that move in the game at all. I don't know why it's here. So that leaves us with Future Sight, Psychic. Those are the two most widely used Psychic charge moves. Are we going to nerf Psychic just because we feel that Medicham needs to be nerfed? That is ridiculous. That is an emotional, short-sighted viewpoint. That's ridiculous. So we can't nerf Psychic either. That would narrow it down to Future Sight, which not a lot of Pokemon use either. So we can't nerf its charge moves, and we certainly cannot nerf Counter because the fighters already are in need of some help. Nerfing those further is just ridiculous. We can't nerf any of Medicham's moves, and you can't really nerf the stats. And this is not that it is in need of a nerf. It's certainly not. So let's have a look at why it's not in need of a nerf. We've already looked at why nerfing its moves would be absolutely ridiculous and quite catastrophic, would set the game back quite a bit. So let's look at Medicham versus the Great League meta and look at why it's not in need of a nerf. All right, guys, still on PV Poke. We've got Medicham here, and we are going to look at it up against the Great League meta. As you can see up top, we are in the multi-battle simulation with the Great League on. So we've got the twos. I always like starting with the twos. Let's have a look here. So Medicham has a 55.8% win rate. Okay. My baseline for analyzing a Pokemon's win rate is 50%. If that's baseline, so it's basically 50-50, which is good. That's pretty average. Medicham, as we can see in the twos, up against the Great League meta is slightly above 50%. So if a Pokemon gets into, I would say, the mid to high 60s, that's pretty high, and venturing into broken territory, I would say mid 60s and beyond. Okay, let's have a look at this thing and see what we can do to bring that down a little bit. Medicham is nowhere near there. It's slightly above 50. It's 55.8, let's say 56. That's a good Pokemon that serves a solid purpose. It's a good Pokemon. It's not broken. Now let's look at why it might seem broken, guys. So this stems from mostly nerfing Trevenant. Okay, so nerfing Trevenant was quite catastrophic, and we saw that with the unhinged usage of Medicham and Lantern. Trevenant, the one Pokemon that keeps both of those Pokemon in check. We nerfed that thing, and the usage just dropped off the cliff, guys. So in this video, we're going to look at bringing Trevenant back and how we can, I would say, the path of least resistance to doing that. But look at this here. We've got Alolan Marowak. Does not get used. Why? Because two Pokemon that Medicham is often paired with, Noctowl and Lantern, exist as well, beside Medicham, generally on the same team. Noctowl and Lantern keep Alolan Marowak out of the meta. Same goes for Jellicent. Okay, so we've got Charmaine that gets used, Sableye definitely gets used. Noctowl kind of culls that usage a little bit. Cofagrigus, forget about it. No one uses Cofagrigus. We're going to have a look at Cofagrigus in this video. Pelipper. Lantern keeps Pelipper usage quite low. What else do we have? Frostlass. All of the steel types as well as Lantern keep Frostlass out of the open Great League meta. Toxapex should be used a lot more, but a lot of people either don't have access to it or they take one look at Brine and they say, no, I'm out. That's an awful move. So I've been wanting to buff Toxapex for a while, and I think that would be a good idea because it is a good answer to Medicham. The key to not having Medicham feel broken. So let me backtrack a little bit. A lot of these Pokemon that have good matchups up against Medicham are neutralized by other Pokemon that Medicham is often paired with, which makes this win rate actually technically a lot higher. So the problem is not Medicham. The problem is not having enough adequate answers in the meta. That's the key, not the Pokemon itself. It's not broken. It doesn't have the greatest charge moves. It has very good stats and a very good fast move. But it's not having enough available Pokemon in the meta that can address Medicham. So that's what we're going to focus on. We're not nerfing anything. We're not bringing the game back. We're going to progress the game forward by adding new meta threats into the meta to address Medicham and others. But we're focusing on Medicham in this video. So we're going to look at some Pokemon that can get some updates that would be addressing Medicham to address this win rate that is kind of deceiving, because a lot of these Pokemon that have good matchups up against Medicham are neutralized. So we're gonna have a look at that. But yeah, a lot of these Pokemon that beat Medicham, they're just not used, so that makes the win rate seem it's actually a lot higher, given that. So let's look at the ones. It's basically the same, but this is just to show you it's still at a 55% win rate, but that is actually a lot higher because Jellicent's not being used. Cofagrigus is not being used. Frostlass, rarely used. Same goes for Marowak. And Trevenant not being used. Trevenant addresses 2 of the big 3, that being Lantern and Medicham. Of course, it can do nothing to Noctowl, but 2 out of 3 is not bad. Skarmory has a terrible fast move, so it does not get used. Toxapex does not get used. So yeah, I just wanted to show you guys this win rate. Even with that, given that a lot of its major threats aren't used, on paper, 55% win rate, not broken. Very good, but not broken. And it does get slightly worse in the zeros. We can have a look at that. 51% in the zeros. So right at baseline, definitely not a broken Pokemon. What's making Medicham feel broken is the absence of viable Pokemon that can address Medicham and keep it in check. So I wanted to show you guys that. You small minority of people that feel that Medicham should be nerfed, again, that is a very lazy and short-sighted viewpoint. Let's look at how to fix this problem by injecting new meta threats into the meta and progressing the game forward. That is how we can solve this problem. So what we're going to be doing is looking at 4 typings. We're going to be looking at ghost types, fairy types, a few psychics, and a few poisons that we could potentially buff, inject into the meta to address Medicham, because that is how you solve this problem. Let's start with the ghost types, because Trevenant falls in that category, and that is the very first Pokemon that we need to look at bringing back to relevance. So let's look at some ghost types. Or actually, excuse me, first we're going to look at the some move updates that we can implement to buff these ghosts, fairies, poisons, and psychics. So let's look at the moves first. All right, guys, so here are a few moves that I would like to see updated that would really help these 4 categories, that being ghost types, fairy types, psychics, a few psychics, and a few poisons. So looking at this here, some of these might look familiar because they've been in my wish list. My previous video that's sort of in this category, my wish list video. So what we're looking at, Whirlpool, that's a new fast attack that I proposed in my wish list. That is a Spark clone. It's a 2-turn fast move that does 4 damage and generates 8 energy. And you might be thinking, Whirlpool, a new water type fast attack, how is that going to help address Medicham? Stick with me here, you'll see why in a minute. And then we've got a new charge move that we could potentially introduce into the game, Grassy Glide. This is a charge move that a lot of grass types have access to. And this is what's going to fix Trevenant. We're going to give Trevenant this newly proposed charge move. Again, this is hypothetical. This is what I would like to see in my perfect world. So Grassy Glide would be what Seed Bomb was. So I think they wanted to buff Seed Bomb to, or it's not really buffed. It's actually been nerfed, but they wanted to give it to other Pokemon, which they did. So I think going back into Seed Bomb and adjusting that would mess up the other Pokemon that they were trying to bring to relevance as well. So I think the path to least resistance would be to just add a new grass move. You can give it to Trevenant initially, and it's basically what Seed Bomb was before the season. So doing 55 damage, costing 40 energy. You give that to Trevenant initially. That fixes Trevenant. It goes back to a 5 cycle for Seed Bomb, which is where it was before they messed around with Seed Bomb. So Seed Bomb stays where they updated it. It can stay on all those other Pokemon, but Trevenant just gets this move to bring it back to a 5 cycle on its grass type move. That's going to fix Trevenant. That's going to bring Trevenant back to where it was. And that's going to alleviate a lot of this right off the bat, just bringing Trevenant back to where it was. That's going to be addressing Medicham and Lantern, two of the biggest complaints that we have with the Great League. And I want to do one on Lantern as well, but I don't think I will have time before they announce the new season. So we're going to focus on the big one in Medicham. That's what we're focusing on. So Grassy Glide, Trevenant gets that. More grass types can get it in the future. If you want to do it along with Trev, fine, by all means. And it feels counterintuitive to introduce a not so good charge move, but that's what we've got to do for Trevenant to bring it back into the meta to where it was. Then we've got Feint Attack. Again, these next three of these I've gone over in my wish list, but we'll do a quick refresher for those of you who may not have caught my wish list. Feint Attack, I've been wanting to buff that for a while now. What I'd like to see is it become a Shadow Claw clone, 2-turn fast move that never gets used. A crying shame. It does 6 damage. That's not going to change. What we're going to do is change the energy generation from 6 to 8. And Bulldoze, we're going to update Bulldoze, another one that was on my wish list. What we're essentially doing is making that a Scald clone. So the damage will not change. It will stay at 80, but we're going to be dropping the energy cost from 60 to 50, and we will give it a 30% chance to lower attack by 1 stage. Next, we've got Nightshade, a move that a lot of Pokemon can learn, but never use because it is an awful move, one of the worst moves in the game. I'm taking jabs here, but if you guys want to nerf Ice Punch, you would be making it basically as unusable as a move like how Nightshade is now. I don't want to do that. Let's not do that. That's a terrible idea, but I digress. Nightshade, we're going to be buffing. It has wide distribution. A lot of Pokemon can learn this, and it would be sort of a middle of the road bait move, a solid move with my proposed change. Damage would stay at 60, but we're going to drop that energy cost from 55 to 40, making it a viable charge move in the game. I think the ghost types were in need of a mid-type charge move. We've got Shadow Ball, that's a nuke move. And honestly, the smaller moves, I think Shadow Punch, not great. Shadow Ball, really the only real good charge move. So let's change that. Let's get a mid type ghost attack that could serve as a solid bait move. So 60-40, that would be my change. And then Draining Kiss, one that I featured in my wish list. I would like to see that move get buffed, much like Nightshade goes unnoticed, and that's for good reason. Much like Nightshade, it is every bit as terrible. Currently it does 60 damage and it costs 55 energy. With my proposed update for it, the energy would stay the same, but we're going to lower the energy cost from 55 to 45, And we're going to give it a debuff to lower the attack by 1 stage. That's a guaranteed debuff, essentially making it an Icy Wind clone. So that's going to help out our fairies. Nightshade, Feint Attack should be helping out some of our ghost types. And Grassy Glide's going to be helping out Trevenant. So these are the moves that are going to set the stage for these Pokemon that we are going to highlight. We're going to start with the ghost types, so let's have a look at those. All right, guys, here are the ghost types that I would like to see buffed. We've got the moves up in the top left corner, just to serve as a reminder for you. But we have 7 ghost types here that could see some relevance with my proposed buffs. I'm going to try not to rush too much. If you feel like this seems rushed, I'm trying to get this recorded before day 2 of GoFest. So bear with me here. But this needs to get out. This needs to be done because it drives me absolutely crazy hearing people utter the phrase nerf Medicham. This is how the best way to nerf Medicham. That's nonsense. Stop it. But ghost types. Nothing can keep Medicham in check better than a good ghost type, right, guys? And we are starting with Trevenant, getting Grassy Glide, as I mentioned, bringing Trevenant back to where it was before they messed it up by nerfing Seed Bomb. Next, we've got Cofagrigus, getting my proposed buffed Nightshade. It can learn this in the main series. Same goes for Runerigus. They can both learn this in the main series, and that would give Cofagrigus more play in the meta by giving it a bait move, something it has been in need of for a very long time. Oh my goodness, this thing definitely needs a bait move. That's why it's not being used. Noctowl plays a big part in that as well, but it doesn't have a bait move. You have to be able to bait in many situations at the very high levels of Pokemon Go Battle League. So giving it a bait move with Stab nonetheless, I think would increase the usage, which would in turn address the overuse of Medicham. Cofagrigus, an amazing ghost type, has a very good stat product. Same goes for Runerigus. Giving Runerigus a bait move like Nightshade would also help it out. And that would be a 5 cycle on that move because it runs Shadow Claw. It would take 5 Shadow Claws to get to a Nightshade. So we're giving Nightshade to Runerigus and Cofagrigus. We're giving Grassy Glide to Trevenant. Those are already 3 amazing ghost types injected into the meta to address Medicham. And that would bring that win rate down, as well as having solid play in the rest of the Great League. Next, we've got Misdreavus and Mismagius getting my proposed buff Draining Kiss. This is not a move that they both have, but these Pokemon do not get used. So Misdreavus would be the one used, I think, in the Great League. Mismagius can also see some play in Ultra League. So Misdreavus has a similar stat product to Sableye. So if you're familiar with the damage that Sableye can take, you can apply that to Misdreavus. It runs Hex, has access to a nice variety of moves, but I think giving it a Icy Wind clone, but that deals fairy damage, would be very unique and interesting, and I would think would increase the usage quite a bit. We're going to buff those 2 as well, being able to hit Medicham for super effective damage while also lowering its attack, which would really give Medicham some problems. We're also giving my proposed Nightshade buff to Dusclops, as well as its evolution Dusk Noir. So I also want to buff Feint Attack. So Dusclops already has Feint Attack. So that would give it a nice 2-turn fast move that would allow it to fight back against normal types like Noctowl, while also having a very solid bait move in Nightshade. It also has access to Ice Punch. Again, you want to be buffing Ice Punch or nerfing Ice Punch and hurting Pokemon like Dusclops, which already doesn't is in need of some love? I think not. But I digress yet again. And we would be giving Dusk Noir also would be getting Feint Attack and Nightshade. It does not currently have Feint Attack, so we will add that into its move pool. It can learn that in the main series, which means that it can learn that in Pokemon Go. So I think that would give Dusclops some more meta relevance in the Great League. Another ghost type to address Medicham, dropping that win rate down even more. So we're basically going to do to Medicham what we did with Noctowl this season, buffing all those ice types. We definitely saw a difference there, while not making Noctowl completely irrelevant with an unnecessary nerf. So you see where I'm going, guys? We inject new meta threats into the meta that culls the usage. It doesn't feel overused and likewise broken. Which is crazy to think about, but some people are actually pushing this idea. Dusk Noir could see some play in the Great League, but mostly in the Ultra League, which I think it would be nice. Miss McGeeus and Dusk Noir in the Ultra League would be nice. More answers to Cresselia. The more we can introduce there, the better off we are, right, guys? If you know what I mean. Those of you who play Ultra. So those are the ghost types that I want to see buffed. These are some fixes. We've got 7 ghost types that can be introduced into the meta that would be addressing Medicham. So let's have a look at some fairies that I would like to see addressed. Alright guys, we're going to fly right through the remainder of this because this is already getting a lot longer than I wanted it to be. I'm going to stop with my digressions and just stick to the script here. Not that I have a script, but we're going to stay on topic. So these are the fairies that I want to see buffed. Again, we've got the 2 proposed updates in the top left corner, just to serve as a friendly reminder to you. The one I'm most excited for would be Sylveon getting Mystical Fire. I think that would give Sylveon a lot more usage. It also has so you can use it as a boring charmer with Charm, or you could use it in a more dynamic fashion by running Quick Attack on it. That's what I would be doing. But giving it Mystical Fire would give it some significant play, both in the Great League as well as the Ultra League, because it would have some very valuable Steel type coverage. So we need to make this happen. This is another fairy that could threaten Medicham because it already has access to Draining Kiss. So this would make Sylveon very, very dynamic and very fun to use. Choosing between Mystical Fire or Draining Kiss. Both of those are Icy Wind clones, by the way. It would sort of give it sort of a Drifblim dynamic where you could choose or run both. I would probably run both myself, but you could also run its Legacy Last Resort as well for some nice coverage as well. The possibilities open right up with a Draining Kiss buff, as well as giving it Mystical Fire because it already has Draining Kiss. So that's the one I'm most excited for. Next we have Azumarill. I want to give Azumarill Scald. That would increase Azumarill usage, which is also another very good Medicham answer. I don't like using Azumarill myself because I feel like as a water type, it should be reliably beating strong steel types like Stunfisk and Bastiodon, which can get a bit dicey with its current moveset. So I want to give Azumarill Scald, make it a little bit more dynamic, and yet another Medicham answer. Next, we've got Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff already has access to Feint Attack. I think giving it a more dynamic 2-turn fast move that can generate energy relatively fast would put that Disarming Voice buff to good use and give us yet another very good answer to Medicham, as well as some other things in the meta. And these 4 off to the side will be getting Draining Kiss. Would see some increased usage. Out of these 4, the 2 I would be most excited for would be A9 getting a Icy Wind clone that deals fairy damage. Sign me up. Already a solid, decent answer to Medicham, particularly with Charm, but You could run it in a more dynamic fashion with Powder Snow, getting to a Icy Wind clone that deals fairy damage, coming in the form of a buffed Draining Kiss. It does not learn it now, but has the potential to learn it in the main series. That would be fantastic. You'd be able to hit Medicham for super effective damage at a relative rate. Same goes for Slurpuff. That's another one that I'm very excited for. I think Togetic also very much in need of a solid fairy move that it can get to at a relative rate. Dazzling Gleam is nice, very satisfying if you can land it, and that's a big if. Giving it a cheaper move that can also potentially apply a debuff, bait some shields. That makes Togetic very nice as well. But Slurpuff, one I'm very excited for because it already has Flamethrower. It already has that steel coverage, but Play Rough is not a very good move. I think having 2 nuke moves on something like that, not ideal. It limits it, but giving it that bait potential with Stab, can apply a debuff, bait a shield, hit Medicham for super effective. Buffing these fairies, I think, would also solve a perceived Medicham problem in having it feel overpowered. That just comes from the overuse and Medicham already being a good Pokemon. You combine that with rampant overusage, people see it a lot more, it's going to feel like it's broken. And not having the viable answers. So all of these compounding issues is what's leading to this. So this is how we fix this and introduced and inject new meta threats into the meta. So let's buff these fairies and give us even more answers to Medicham in the Great League. Let's have a look at some psychic types. All right, guys, here are the psychic types. Again, the proposed buffed moves up in the top left corner to serve as a friendly reminder. But we're going to buff a few psychic types that historically are very good answers to Medicham, most notably Hypno and Slowbro. Those of you who play the Love Cup will know how good Slowbro is up against Medicham, and the method to the madness revealed here. Whirlpool, I proposed in my wish list we would be giving to the Slowbro family. Slowbro is the representative of the family, so it would be getting that fast attack Whirlpool that deals water type damage, 2-turn fast move. It is a Spark clone, which would allow it to generate energy faster. It would be on a 5 cycle for Surf, which it got with its Calm Day. Would give it stronger play up against steel types in the meta, as well as allowing it to get to those psychics a little bit faster. This would shut down Medicham like you wouldn't believe. It hardwalls Medicham at every turn. So buffing the Slow family, Slowbro here, as well as King and the Galarians. The whole Slow family would get this move, injecting more Medicham threats into the meta. Let's make that happen. Next, we've got Hypno. I know I'm going out of order, but I'm highlighting the ones I'm most excited for. Slowbro being one. Hypno next. Another one I'm very excited for would get Psycho Cut. It can also learn Counter. I looked at the sims on Counter. It wouldn't be too bad. It would have a very similar win rate to Medicham. Believe it or not. Surprise, surprise. But I think would feel very broken. So let's settle for Psycho Cut. Give it that energy generation with Stab. Would be beating Medicham quite reliably. Would be beating Deoxys with Shadow Ball, as well as its mixed bag of charge moves that it could potentially learn. It would be on a 5 cycle or 5-4 cycle for the elemental punches, but as we already highlighted in this video, the elemental punches already are not very good moves, and Hypno does not hit very hard, so I don't see that being too much of a problem. But if it does become a bit of a problem, we can have a look at that. But let's give Psycho Cut on Hypno a try. Sign me up. Next, Bronzong would not be getting any new moves, but would be receiving buffs coming in the form of a feint attack buff as well as a bulldoze buff. This Pokemon would address the big 3 with the steel typing. It would be addressing Noctowl, And with Feint Attack being able to get to the charge moves a bit faster than with Confusion would make it much more dynamic. Being able to get to a buffed Bulldoze would hit Lantern, as well as give it coverage against opposing steel types, while dealing neutral fast move pressure to just about everything in the meta. And then we've got Grumpig getting Snarl. This is not a move that it can currently learn. This thing is in dire need of a decent fast move. We all know Snarl would also be getting Psyshock, which would be a nice bait move. It does have access to Shadow Ball as well currently in the game, as well as having access to, I believe, Psychic, and maybe one other psychic move. But we want to give it a bait move with stab coming in the form of Psyshock. That would make this Pokemon a lot more dynamic and would give it some insanely strong play up against Medicham. You imagine Snarl plus Shadow Ball, Medicham would be quaking in its boots. So these are the psychic types that I want to see buffed. Even more answers to Medicham and the meta to call that very overused Medicham usage. Last but not least, let's have a look at some poison types. All right, guys, last but not least, we have a few poison types here that I would like to see get some love. That would also provide some very strong Medicham answers into the meta, which is very necessary. I will be the first to admit that is very necessary. What is not necessary is a nerf. Amoonguss, let's start with Feint Attack. That's already a move that it already has. This is has a very decent stat product, pretty bulky, has access currently to Foul Play and Grass Knot, I believe, so buffing Feint Attack, which it already has, would allow it some increased viability in the Great League. Next, we've got Toxapex here getting Scald. I think the combination of not enough people having a Toxapex or having one and not wanting to use it just because we know that Brine is an awful move. It seems a little bit ridiculous. I think we give it Scald, which it can learn in the main series, would increase the Toxapex usage. An excellent answer to Medicham. It does reliably beat Medicham in the 2s and 1s, I do believe, as well as having some solid play up against Noctowl. It just outbulks Noctowl. That's yet another Noctowl answer as well. Next, the one I'm most excited for, Nidoqueen getting Shadow Claw. Let's make this happen. Holy smokes, that would be amazing. Being able to do super effective fast move pressure to Medicham. It would get to those Poison Fangs at a faster rate. It'd be on a 5 cycle, as well as getting to Earth Power at a faster rate as well. So yes, that would be amazing. You guys can look at Nidoqueen with Shadow Claw. It would be a lot of fun. But I don't want this video to drag on. Those are my proposed answers to injecting Medicham threats into the meta, which is absolutely what we need. And that would fix, that I believe will solve the problem of Medicham feeling broken. There are compounding issues, which leads to this idea that Medicham needs a nerf. One, it's a very good Pokemon, has very good stats, does not have great charge moves, has a very good fast move, but it's a good Pokemon with good stats. It's being grossly overused, and that's to be expected when you don't have very many threats for it in the meta. So we inject these new threats into the Great League meta to address Medicham, as well as having play up against other Great League Pokemon. So it's not just for Medicham. They just happen to keep Medicham in check quite nicely, but they will also have some very strong dynamic play up against the rest of the Great League meta as a whole. This will solve the problem of Medicham feeling broken. I have demonstrated why Medicham is not objectively broken right now and why it is not in need of a nerf. Let's not do that. That's a bad idea. We saw what that did to Trevenant, which ironically has led to this very problem and why we're talking about this right now. So, nerfing Medicham, stop that. That is nonsense. That is a very lazy and short-sighted viewpoint. Injecting new threats that can address Medicham into the meta is what will solve the problem. We looked at that in The Sims. So I don't want this dragging on too much longer. This is already way longer than I wanted it to be. So I've got to get to editing this and get that finished in time for GoFest. But guys, I had a blast. I hope you all enjoyed. As always, I thank you for watching and keep up the grind. Thank you guys.